The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Main Street in Cedar Falls, Kansas, painting the weathered storefronts in shades of gold and amber. Jack Morrison pulled his sedan to the curb outside Murphy's Diner, the engine ticking as it cooled. Another failed meeting, another door closed. At 35, he felt decades older, worn down by rejection and the constant weight of bills he couldn't pay. He sat for a moment, watching an elderly man emerge from the hardware store across the street, moving with the unhurried pace of someone who had nowhere urgent to be. Jack envied him that peace. His own life felt like a constant sprint toward disappointment. The divorce papers in his glove compartment were 3 months old now, but they still felt fresh. Miranda had been patient for years while his sales career spiraled downward, but patience had limits. So did savings accounts. So did hope. Jack pushed open the diner door, a bell chiming his arrival. The interior smelled of coffee and fried onions, comfort food for people who needed comforting. He ordered pie he couldn't afford, and coffee he didn't want, sitting in a booth by the window where he could watch his car. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and tired feet, refilled his cup without being asked. "Long day?" "Getting longer," Jack said, managing a smile. "But the pie's good." "My mother's recipe. She always said food should make you feel less alone in the world." Jack nodded, not trusting his voice. Less alone. When was the last time he'd felt anything but alone? An hour passed before he finally paid the check and walked back to his car. The sun hung lower now, turning the sky the color of burnished copper. He had one more appointment tomorrow morning in Wichita, a long shot at a contract that could save his business, maybe even his future. The smart thing would be to find a motel, get some rest, prepare for what might be his last real chance. Jack opened the driver's door and froze. There was someone in his back seat. A woman lay curled on her side, using his emergency blanket as a pillow. Blonde hair spilled across the fabric, and even in sleep tension lined her face. She clutched a small battered suitcase against her chest like a shield. Jack's first instinct was anger. Someone had broken into his car, violated his space. His second was concern. She looked exhausted, vulnerable. Her clothes were wrinkled as if she'd been wearing them for days, and there were tear stains on her cheeks. "Hey," he said softly, not wanting to frighten her. "Miss." She stirred, then jerked awake, eyes wide with alarm. For a moment they stared at each other, Jack standing beside his open door, she sitting up in his back seat, both frozen in the awkwardness of the moment. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice hoarse. "I didn't mean to. I was just so tired and your car was unlocked and I thought—" She trailed off, realizing how it sounded. "You thought you'd take a nap in a stranger's car?" Color rose in her cheeks, but she didn't look away. "I know how it looks, but I wasn't stealing anything. I just needed somewhere safe to rest for a few minutes." There was something in her voice, not defiance but dignity. She wasn't making excuses or begging forgiveness. She was simply stating facts, as if the situation were perfectly reasonable. Jack studied her face. She was pretty in an understated way, with clear blue eyes and a mouth that looked like it smiled often, though it wasn't smiling now. There was something familiar about her, though he was certain they'd never met. "What's your name?" he asked. "Anna." She paused. "Anna Hayes. Where are you heading, Anna?" "Dodge City. My sister lives there. I need to get to her." Another pause, shorter this time. "I can pay for gas. I have some money." Jack looked at the suitcase she still held. It was old, the kind people inherited rather than bought with brass. Corners worn smooth by handling. Whatever she owned, it all fit in there. "What happened to your car?" "I don't have one. I took the bus as far as I could, but—" She shrugged, a gesture that tried to make light of something that clearly wasn't. Jack felt the familiar tug of conscience, the voice that had gotten him in trouble more times than he could count. Miranda used to call it his rescuer complex, his inability to walk past someone in need. It was one of the things she'd loved about him, until it became one of the things that drove them apart. "Dodge City's 200 miles west," he said. "I'm heading east to Wichita." Anna's face fell, but she nodded. "I understand. I'll find another way." She started to get out of the car, moving carefully, as if she hurt. Jack noticed a bruise on her wrist, mostly healed but still visible. "Wait," he heard himself say. "What kind of trouble are you running from?" She stopped, half in and half out of the car. "What makes you think I'm running from trouble?" "Because people don't sleep in strangers' cars when life's going well." Anna looked at him for a long moment, seeming to weigh something in her mind. Finally, she sat back down, leaving the door open. "I worked for Coleman Industries in Kansas City. Do you know them?" Jack's stomach dropped. "I know them." He knew them very well. Coleman Industries had just rejected his proposal for their insurance contract, the one he'd been counting on to save his business. "I was Mr. Coleman's secretary for 3 years. Good job, steady pay." But his son, Derek, started taking over more of the company operations, and I began to notice things. Money moving in ways that didn't make sense. Contracts that seemed designed to benefit Derek's friends rather than the company. You found evidence of fraud. I found evidence of a lot of things. When I tried to talk to Mr. Coleman about it, Derek found out. She touched her wrist unconsciously. "He made it clear that I should keep my mouth shut and mind my own business." Jack felt a cold anger building in his chest. "He hurt you." He made his position clear. But I couldn't just ignore what I'd seen. So I copied some files, documented what I could. I was going to take it to the authorities. "Was going to?" Anna's laugh was bitter. "Derek beat me to it. The next morning I was arrested for embezzlement. Somehow money had gone missing from several accounts, and all the evidence pointed to me. My bank account suddenly showed deposits I'd never made. Computer logs showed me accessing systems I'd never touched. He framed you, very professionally. I made bail, but my lawyer said the case was airtight. The only evidence that could prove my innocence was in those files I'd copied, but they'd disappeared from my apartment, along with my laptop, my savings, and anything else that might help me." Jack leaned against the car, processing her story. It explained the exhaustion, the way she held herself, the fear he'd seen in her eyes when she first woke up. "So you ran?" "I ran. What else could I do? Stay and go to prison for crimes I didn't commit?" Derek had made it clear what would happen if I tried to fight him. They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of her story settling between them. The sun had dropped lower, and the street was emptying as businesses closed for the day. "Your sister in Dodge City," Jack said finally. "She can help you?" Anna looked away. "I hope so. She's all the family I have left." Jack made a decision that surprised him. "Get in the front seat." "What?" "If I'm giving you a ride, you might as well be comfortable." Anna stared at him. "You'll take me to Dodge City. But your meeting in Wichita is tomorrow morning. Dodge City's only a few hours out of the way. I can drive you there tonight and still make it to Wichita by morning." It was a lie, and they both knew it. Dodge City was in the opposite direction, and there was no way he could make both trips and still be fresh for the most important meeting of his career. But Anna didn't call him on it. "Why?" she asked simply. Jack thought about that. Why was he willing to sacrifice his last chance for a woman he'd just met? Was it the bruise on her wrist? The dignity in her voice? The way she reminded him of himself, alone, and running out of options? Because sometimes doing the right thing is the only choice that lets you sleep at night, he said. Anna climbed into the passenger seat, still clutching her suitcase. Jack walked around to the driver's side, his mind already working through the logistics. He could drive her to Dodge City, drop her off, then drive through the night to Wichita. He'd be exhausted for the meeting, but it was still possible. He started the engine, and it responded with a grinding sound that made his heart sink. The noise was new, metallic, and ominous. "Is it supposed to do that?" Anna asked. Jack turned the key again. The engine caught, but the grinding persisted, like metal teeth trying to bite through something too hard. "No," he said, pulling away from the curb, despite the noise. But sometimes cars, like people, keep going even when they probably shouldn't. As they drove west out of Cedar Falls, the sun setting behind them, Jack caught Anna watching him in the reflection of the passenger window. There was something in her expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude, yes, but also a kind of measuring look, as if she were trying to figure out what sort of man would risk his future for a stranger. "This car only drives one way now," Jack said, more to himself than to her, as the grinding sound grew louder and the highway stretched endlessly ahead. Anna turned to look at him directly. "What do you mean?" Jack wasn't entirely sure himself, but something about the moment felt like a point of no return, a choice that would define everything that came after. "I mean, we're committed to this road," he said. "Whatever happens, we keep going forward." They'd been driving for an hour when Anna began to talk, not about Derek Coleman or the charges against her, but about smaller things. Her childhood in Nebraska, her love of old movies, the way Kansas looked different in summer than it did in spring. Jack found himself listening with an attention that surprised him. It had been months since he'd had a real conversation with anyone, months since someone had shared pieces of themselves with him. Miranda used to talk like this, back when they first married, filling comfortable silences with observations and memories. "You're a good listener," Anna said, as they passed a sign for Liberal, still 50 miles ahead. "Not much else to do. Most people think listening means waiting for their turn to talk." Jack glanced at her. "What made you notice things at Coleman Industries? The irregularities, I mean." Anna was quiet for a moment, watching farmland roll past her window. "I grew up poor. When you've been poor, you notice when numbers don't add up. You notice when money moves in ways that don't make sense. Your parents, my father worked construction when there was work. My mother cleaned houses. They did their best, but—" She shrugged. "Some months there wasn't enough. You learn to pay attention when survival depends on it." The grinding sound from the engine was getting worse. Jack had been ignoring it, hoping it would resolve itself, but denial only worked so long. As they crested a hill, the car shuddered and the grinding became a definite knock. "That doesn't sound good," Anna said. "No, it doesn't." The engine temperature gauge was climbing into the red. Jack pulled over at a rest stop, a couple of picnic tables and a bathroom that had seen better days. Steam was beginning to rise from under the hood. "How much do you know about cars?" Anna asked, as Jack popped the hood. "Enough to know when I'm in trouble." The radiator was leaking, coolant pooling on the asphalt beneath the car, but that wasn't the worst of it. The grinding sound was coming from deeper in the engine, something that would require tools and expertise Jack didn't have. "Can you fix it?" Jack looked at the engine, then at Anna, then at the empty highway stretching in both directions. The nearest town was Liberal, still 40 miles away. The sun was setting and he had no cell signal. "I can try to patch the radiator leak with some tape and add water, but that grinding sound—" He shook his head. "That's internal. Belt, maybe. Or something worse." Anna climbed out of the car and came to stand beside him. "So we're stuck." "Looks like it." They stood there for a moment, both staring at the disabled engine as if it might heal itself through observation. "I'm sorry," Anna said. "This is my fault. If you hadn't tried to help me, don't." Jack's voice was sharper than he intended. "Don't apologize for needing help, and don't apologize for me choosing to give it. But your meeting tomorrow was always a long shot anyway." That wasn't true, but it felt true in the moment. Jack had been chasing increasingly desperate opportunities for months, each one promising to be the break he needed, each one ultimately leading to disappointment. Maybe this was just how his story was going to end, broken down on a Kansas highway with a woman he barely knew. "There's got to be a way to get help," Anna said. "Another car will come by. Eventually. But who's going to pick up two strangers? On a highway at night?" As if summoned by his words, headlights appeared in the distance, approaching from the east. Jack stepped into the road and waved his arms. The car, a pickup truck, slowed briefly, then accelerated past them without stopping. "Friendly," Anna muttered. They tried the radio, hoping to find a local station that might give them information about nearby services. Instead, they caught the tail end of a news report that made Anna go rigid in her seat, wanted for questioning in connection with embezzlement charges totaling over $300,000. Anna Hayes, 32, formerly employed by Coleman Industries, is considered dangerous and should not be approached by civilians. Anyone with information about her whereabouts should contact... Jack snapped off the radio. "Dangerous." Anna was staring straight ahead, her face pale. "He's escalating, making me sound like a threat so people won't help me." "Who would believe that? You're about as dangerous as a librarian. People believe what they hear on the news. And Derek has connections, money, influence." She turned to look at Jack, and he saw fear in her eyes for the first time. "You need to leave me here and go. Find help for your car and get to your meeting. If you're caught helping me..." "I'm not leaving you." "Jack, you don't understand what you're up against. Derek Coleman doesn't just destroy people who cross him. He erases them, makes them disappear so completely that it's like they never existed." The conviction in her voice chilled him. This wasn't paranoia or hysteria. This was someone who had seen what power could do when it was used without conscience. Another set of headlights appeared, moving slower this time. Jack flagged it down, and an older man in a battered sedan pulled over. "Car trouble?" the man asked through his rolled-down window. "Engine problems," Jack said. "Is there a garage in Liberal that might still be open?" The man looked from Jack to Anna, and Jack saw recognition flicker in his eyes. He'd heard the news report too. "Sorry, friend," the man said, his tone changing. "Can't help you." He drove away quickly, leaving them standing in his dust. "He knew," Anna said. "Maybe. Or maybe he just didn't want to get involved." But Jack had seen the look too. Recognition, followed by fear. The news report had done its job. They walked to the rest stop's picnic table and sat down. The sun had set completely now, and the first stars were becoming visible. It was beautiful country, peaceful in the way that only empty places could be. Under different circumstances, Jack might have enjoyed the solitude. "Tell me about this sister of yours," he said. Anna was quiet for so long that Jack thought she might not answer. "There is no sister," she said finally. Jack wasn't surprised, but hearing it confirmed still felt like a punch to the stomach. "Where were you really planning to go?" "I don't know. Somewhere Derek couldn't find me, somewhere I could start over." She looked at him, and even in the dim light he could see tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry I lied to you. I just thought if I had a destination, a reason, you might be more willing to help." "You were wrong about that, was I?" Jack considered this. Would he have been as quick to help if she'd told him the truth from the beginning? If she'd said she was a fugitive with no plan and nowhere to go? "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe not. I understand if you want to leave me here. You've already done more than..." "Anna," Jack's voice cut through her words. "I told you I'm not leaving you. I meant it." She studied his face in the starlight. "Why? You don't even know if I'm telling the truth about Derek, about any of it. I could be exactly what the news says I am." "Are you?" "No." "Then that's all. I need to know." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching the occasional car pass without stopping. Jack found himself thinking about choices, about the moments that defined a person's character. He'd made a choice in Cedar Falls when he decided to help Anna. Everything since then had been consequences of that choice, good and bad. "What was your meeting about?" Anna asked. In Wichita. Jack laughed, but there was no humor in it. Insurance contract for Coleman Industries. Anna stared at him. You're kidding. I wish I was. I've been trying to land that contract for months. It would have been enough to save my business, pay my debts, maybe even convince my ex-wife that I wasn't a complete failure. Oh, Jack. Anna's voice was soft with sympathy. I'm so sorry. You didn't know. And even if you had, it wouldn't have changed anything. Wouldn't it? Jack thought about that. If Anna had told him from the beginning about her connection to Coleman Industries, would he have made the same choice? The question was academic now, but it nagged at him. I don't know, he said honestly. I hope it wouldn't have. More headlights appeared, but this time there were two sets, moving fast. Jack stood up, thinking they might be state police who could help, but as the vehicles got closer, he realized they were slowing down. Anna, he said, his voice tight with sudden alarm. We need to go. What? Why? Because those aren't good Samaritans. The first car, a black SUV, pulled into the rest stop and parked between them and Jack's disabled sedan. The second car, a dark sedan, blocked the exit. Men got out of both vehicles, and even in the poor light, Jack could see they weren't highway. Patrol or local police? Run, he told Anna, but there was nowhere to run. The rest stop was in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by empty farmland. And the men were already spreading out, cutting off any escape routes. Anna Hayes, called a voice from the darkness. It was smooth, educated, carrying the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. I think we need to talk. Chapter 3. The twist, the man who stepped into the circle of light cast by the rest stop's single lamp, was about Jack's age, well-dressed despite the late hour. His hair was styled with the casual perfection that cost real money, and his smile had the predatory quality of someone who enjoyed having power over others. Jack had never seen him before, but he knew immediately who he was looking at. Derek Coleman, Anna said, her voice barely above a whisper. Hello, Anna, you've led me quite a chase. Derek's tone was conversational, as if they were old friends meeting by coincidence. And you must be Mr. Morrison. Jack felt ice in his veins. How do you know my name? I make it my business to know about people who interfere with my affairs. Insurance salesman, recently divorced, struggling financially. You've had some bad luck lately, haven't you? Business contracts falling through, clients deciding to go with other companies. The implication hit Jack like a physical blow. You? Me what? You've been sabotaging my business. Derek's smile widened. Such a strong word, sabotage. I prefer to think of it as market correction. You see, Mr. Morrison, you and I have a history. We've never met. No, but we have mutual acquaintances. Your ex-wife, for instance. Miranda works for Hartwell and Associates now, doesn't she? They handle some legal work for my companies. Jack's mouth went dry. Miranda had never mentioned working with Coleman Industries, but then she wouldn't have. Attorney-client privilege, confidentiality agreements. She probably didn't even know about the connection. Through Miranda, I learned quite a bit about you, your financial troubles, your desperate need for new contracts, your tendency to take on lost causes. Derek glanced at Anna. Like runaway secretaries, for instance. What do you want? Jack asked. What I've always wanted. For Anna to return what she stole from me, and for both of you to forget this unfortunate business ever happened. I didn't steal anything, Anna said, finding her voice. I documented your crimes. Crimes? Derek looked genuinely amused. I've done nothing illegal, Anna. Unethical, perhaps. Morally questionable, certainly, but not illegal. I'm very careful about staying on the right side of the law. The money you moved, the contracts you manipulated, all perfectly legal. Complex, yes. Difficult to understand for someone without an advanced business degree, absolutely. But legal. Derek took a step closer. You, on the other hand, accessed company files without authorization, copied confidential documents, and attempted to blackmail me. Those are crimes." Anna looked stricken. "I never tried to blackmail you." "No? Then what did you call our conversation?" "In my office, when you threatened to expose my illegal activities unless I changed my business practices." Jack could see the trap closing. Derek had maneuvered Anna into a position where her attempts to do the right thing could be twisted into criminal behavior. "The money in my bank account," Anna said desperately. "You put it there to frame me." "I put it there as payment for services rendered, services you provided willingly in exchange for compensation." Derek pulled out his phone and showed them the screen. "I have text messages where you agreed to the arrangement, email confirmations of your bank routing numbers, security footage of you entering my office voluntarily. Those messages are fake. I never prove it." Derek's voice was calm, reasonable. "In a court of law, prove that a multimillionaire businessman with an impeccable reputation fabricated evidence against a secretary who was caught stealing company funds." Jack watched Anna's face crumble as she realized the thoroughness of the trap. Derek hadn't just framed her, he'd created an entire fictional narrative with himself as the victim. "What do you want?" Jack asked again. "Simple." Anna returns the documents she stole, signs a confession admitting to the embezzlement, and serves her time quietly. In exchange, I'll make sure she's sent to a minimum security facility, and I won't press additional charges. And if she refuses? Derek's smile turned cold. "Then I'll destroy both of you. Anna will face maximum penalties for her crimes, plus additional charges for fleeing justice, and you, Mr. Morrison, will face charges as an accessory. Your business will be finished, your reputation ruined. Miranda will lose her job for the conflict of interest. Your parents in Florida will lose their house when the litigation costs bankrupt them." The casual way Derek rattled off these threats, as if he were discussing the weather, made Jack's blood run cold. This wasn't bluster or intimidation. This was a man who had researched every vulnerability, mapped every pressure point. "You're insane," Jack said. "I'm thorough, and I'm patient. I've been orchestrating Mr. Morrison's downfall for months, since Anna came to work for me, and I realized she might eventually become a problem. I needed someone reliable to serve as her accomplice when the time came." "Accomplice? You don't think it's a coincidence that Anna chose your car to sleep in, do you?" Derek looked genuinely delighted by Jack's confusion. "I've been monitoring her since she fled Kansas City. When she bought a bus ticket to Cedar Falls, I made sure your meeting with Coleman Industries ended in rejection. I made sure you'd be in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to play the hero." The world seemed to tilt around Jack. "You're saying this was all planned?" "Not all of it. Anna's actual escape was unexpected. I thought she'd try to fight the charges through legal channels first. But once she ran, it became a matter of damage control. I needed her to lead me to wherever she'd hidden the documents she stole. And I needed a patsy to take the fall as her accomplice." Jack looked at Anna, searching her face for some sign that she'd known, that she'd been part of this elaborate manipulation. But he saw only the same shock and horror he felt. "She didn't know," he said. "Of course not. Anna's many things, but she's not a good enough actress to have fooled you for this long." Derek stepped closer. "The beauty of it is, it doesn't matter. Whether she knew or not, the evidence will show that you two planned this together. Your financial desperation, her access to company files, the convenient way you happened to be in the right place to help her escape." One of Derek's men stepped forward, holding out a tablet. On the screen was a video that made Jack's stomach lurch. It showed him and Anna at the rest stop, but the audio had been altered. Anna was saying things she'd never said, discussing stolen money and escape plans. Jack was agreeing to help her disappear in exchange for a cut of the embezzled funds. Deep fake, Derek said conversationally. Amazing technology. You can make anyone say anything these days. No one will believe it, Anna said desperately. Won't they? A desperate businessman and a fugitive secretary caught together hundreds of miles from where they should be? The narrative writes itself. Derek gestured to his men. Put them in the car. It's time to end this. But as the men moved forward, Jack realized something that Derek had missed in his careful planning. The video showed Jack agreeing to help. Anna escaped for money, but it didn't show him as desperate enough to take such a risk without being certain of the payoff. You made a mistake, Jack said. Derek paused, interested despite himself. Oh? The video. I'm not stupid enough to help a fugitive without knowing where the money is. So where are the documents Anna supposedly stole? Derek's smile faltered slightly. That's not your concern. It is if I'm supposed to be her partner. I'd want to see the evidence, make sure it was worth the risk. The documents are gone, Anna interrupted, suddenly understanding. I never stole any documents. There never were any documents. Derek's facade cracked. Of course there were documents. You accessed confidential. No, Anna said, her voice growing stronger. I saw irregularities in the books, but I never copied anything. I couldn't have, because everything was digital, and you controlled all the access codes. Jack saw it now, the fatal flaw in Derek's plan. He'd built an elaborate frame around a crime that had never actually happened. She's right, Jack said. There are no documents, because she never stole any. You framed her for embezzlement, but you couldn't fake documents that never existed in the first place. Derek's men looked uncertain, waiting for instructions that didn't come. Their boss was staring at Anna with something approaching respect. Very good, he said finally. You're both smarter than I gave you credit for. So what now? Jack asked. Your whole plan was based on Anna having something you wanted, but there's nothing to recover. Oh, but there is, Derek said, his composure returning. Not documents, but something far more valuable. Anna herself. The menace in his voice made Jack step protectively in front of her. You see, Derek continued, Anna did discover irregularities in my business practices, and while those practices aren't illegal, they would certainly be embarrassing if they came to light. Anna represents a loose end, a potential future problem. This whole elaborate charade was simply the most efficient way to eliminate that problem permanently. Jack felt the trap closing around them. You're going to kill us. Kill you? Goodness, no. That would be messy, unnecessary. No, you're simply going to disappear. Two desperate people who fled justice and were never seen again. Very sad, very mysterious, very final. Derek's men moved closer, but before they could reach them, Jack grabbed Anna's hand and ran. They made it perhaps 50 yards before the men caught them. Jack was outnumbered and overpowered, the last thing he saw before. The world went dark was Anna's face, pale and frightened in the moonlight. When he woke up, she was gone. Jack came to slowly, his head pounding and his mouth full of blood. He was lying on the floor of what looked like an abandoned farmhouse, dust motes dancing in shafts of sunlight that streamed through broken windows. His hands were zip-tied behind. His back and every movement sent spikes of pain through his skull. Anna, he called out, but the only response was the echo of his own voice. The house was empty, except for him. Derek and his men had taken Anna and left him here to die, or to serve as a convenient scapegoat when her body was eventually found. Either way, Jack was running out of time. He worked at the zip ties, trying to find enough slack to slip his hands free, but Derek's men had been thorough. The plastic cut into his wrists as he struggled, drawing blood but not loosening the bonds. Think, he told himself. Derek had made mistakes. The man was brilliant, but his arrogance had created vulnerabilities. Jack just had to find them. He managed to get to his feet and began exploring the farmhouse. It was old, probably abandoned for decades, with sagging floors and walls stained by years of weather. In what had once been the kitchen, he found a drawer that had been left partially open. Inside were the remnants of the house's former life, a few pieces of dull silverware, some broken dishes, and, miracle of miracles, Anna's suitcase. Jack stared at it, trying to understand why Derek would have left it behind. Then he realized Derek didn't know what was in it, and he'd been in too much of a hurry to check. To him, it was just a prop in his elaborate fiction, irrelevant now that the game was ending. But Anna had clutched that suitcase like her life depended on it. There had to be a reason. Jack managed to open the suitcase by pressing the latches with his chin. Inside were clothes, toiletries, and a few personal items. But at the bottom, wrapped in a sweater, was a small tablet computer. Jack stared at it, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Anna had said she never copied any documents, but she hadn't said she never had access to them. The tablet was old, probably her personal device, but if she'd used it to access Coleman Industries systems... Working. The tablet with his bound hands was awkward, but eventually he managed to power it on. It was password protected, but Anna had been clever. The password was simply Sister, the fictional person she'd been traveling to see. The tablet's browser history told the story. Anna had accessed Coleman Industries servers dozens of times over the past few months, but not to steal documents. She'd been documenting irregularities in real time, taking screenshots and saving files as she found them. Derek had been partially right. There was evidence of his unethical business practices. But it wasn't evidence Anna had stolen. It was evidence she had created by meticulously recording what she observed while doing her legitimate job. The files showed a pattern of bid rigging, contract manipulation, and financial chicanery that, while technically legal, would destroy Derek's reputation and his father's company if it became public. Anna hadn't been blackmailing Derek. She'd been building a case against him, and Derek knew it. Jack understood now why Derek had gone to such elaborate lengths to discredit Anna. It wasn't about preventing her from revealing crimes, it was about preventing her from revealing the truth about his business practices. The embezzlement charges, the frame job, even Jack's own manipulation, all of it was designed to destroy Anna's credibility so thoroughly that no one would believe anything she said. But Derek had made one critical error. He'd assumed that eliminating Anna would eliminate the evidence. He didn't know about the tablet, didn't know that everything Anna had discovered was preserved in digital form. Jack looked around the farmhouse again, this time with different eyes. It was isolated, but not completely. He could see power lines in the distance, which meant there were probably other buildings nearby. And the tablet still had battery life and a cellular signal. He began uploading Anna's files to every cloud. Storage service he could think of, sending copies to news outlets, regulatory agencies, and law enforcement. It was clumsy work with his hands tied, but desperation made him persistent. While the files uploaded, Jack used the tablet's GPS function to determine his location. He was about 20 miles south of Liberal, in an area of abandoned farmland. But there was something else on the map that caught his attention. A grain elevator complex, about 2 miles to the east. Industrial buildings like that were perfect for hiding someone you didn't want found. They were isolated but accessible, empty, but structurally sound. If Derek was planning to make Anna disappear permanently, that would be an ideal location. Jack finished uploading the files and used the tablet to call 911, giving them his location and Derek's probable whereabouts. Then he began the painful process of freeing himself. The zip ties were industrial strength, but the farmhouse had been abandoned for decades, and time had weakened everything. Jack found a piece of broken glass from a window and began sawing at the plastic bonds, cutting his wrists in the process, but gradually wearing through the material. By the time he freed himself, The sun was beginning to set. He'd been unconscious for hours, which meant Derek had a significant head start. But Jack had advantages Derek didn't know about. The element of surprise, the evidence Anna had gathered, and most importantly, the certain knowledge that he had. Nothing left to lose. His car was still broken down at the rest stop, but Derek's men had left a motorcycle behind, probably forgotten in their haste to leave with Anna. It was an older model, but it started on the third try. Jack had never felt comfortable on motorcycles, but desperation was a powerful teacher. He rode toward the grain elevator complex, the tablet secure in his jacket pocket and Anna's evidence already spreading across the internet like wildfire. The complex was larger than it had appeared on the map, a collection of concrete silos and metal buildings connected by a network of conveyor systems. Most of it looked abandoned, but Jack could see fresh tire tracks in the dirt leading to the largest building. He parked the motorcycle a quarter-mile away and approached on foot. Through a broken window, he could see light and movement inside. Voices carried on the evening air, Derek's smooth tenor and Anna's higher tones, though he couldn't make out the words. Jack circled the building until he found a service entrance that had been left unlocked. Inside, the building was a maze of machinery and storage tanks, most of it covered in years of dust and rust. But toward the center of the space, someone had cleared an area and set up portable lights. Derek stood with his back to Jack, talking to Anna, who was tied to a chair. Two of Derek's men flanked her, looking bored but alert. Really thought, "You could outsmart me," Derek was saying. "After everything I've built, everything I've accomplished, you thought you could bring me down with your little secretary's observations?" "I thought I could stop you from hurting people," Anna replied. Her voice was steady, but Jack could see the fear in her posture. "Hurt people? I've created jobs, generated wealth, contributed to the economy. If some people get left behind in the process, that's the nature of capitalism. You stole from your own father's company. I optimized resource allocation. There's a difference." Jack began moving closer, using the machinery as cover. He needed to get within striking distance of Derek without alerting the guards. "Where is he?" Anna asked suddenly. "Jack, what did you do to him?" "Mr. Morrison is exactly where he needs to be. By the time anyone finds him, this will all be over, and you'll both be yesterday's news. You're going to kill us. I'm going to make you disappear. There's a difference. Killing implies violence, messiness. What I have planned is much more elegant." Derek gestured to his men, and one of them produced a syringe from his jacket. "Heroin. Overdose," Derek explained conversationally. "Very sad. A desperate fugitive, overwhelmed by her circumstances, turns to drugs for escape. It happens more often than you'd think." Jack saw Anna struggle against her bonds, but they held firm. The man with the syringe approached her chair, and Jack knew he was out of time. He stepped out from behind the machinery, making his presence known. "That's far enough," he called out. Derek spun around, and Jack saw genuine surprise in his eyes. "Mr. Morrison, how did you get free, find you, or upload all of Anna's evidence to every news outlet and law enforcement agency I could think of?" The surprise in Derek's eyes turned to alarm. "You're bluffing." Jack pulled out Anna's tablet and showed him the screen. "Am I? Check your phone. I bet you've got some interesting voice messages waiting." Derek fumbled for his phone, his composure finally cracking. As he scrolled through his notifications, his face went pale. "FBI Financial Crimes Division," Jack read from the tablet. "Securities and Exchange Commission, Kansas State Attorney General, the Kansas City Star. Should I go on?" "You stupid bastard," Derek snarled. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I've told the truth. Something you might want to try." Derek's men had drawn their weapons, but they looked uncertain, waiting for orders from a boss who was rapidly losing control of the situation. "It doesn't matter," Derek said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Even if they investigate, Even if they find irregularities, I have lawyers, I have money, I have influence. You had influence, Jack corrected, but influence depends on reputation, and Anna's evidence is going to destroy yours. Your father's company, your business relationships, your political connections, all of it built on the lie that you're an ethical businessman. Derek looked around the abandoned grain elevator, perhaps finally seeing it for what it was, not a place to dispose of problems, but a trap he'd built for himself. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "I want you to let Anna go. I want you to turn yourself in, and I want you to leave us alone. And if I refuse, then you deal with the FBI when they get here. Because I didn't just upload Anna's evidence, I sent them our location too." As if summoned by his words, the sound of approaching vehicles echoed across the empty landscape. Derek's men looked to him for guidance, but he seemed frozen, unable to process the collapse of his carefully constructed world. "Boss," one of them said, "what do we do?" Derek looked at Jack, then at Anna, then at the lights approaching in the distance. Whatever he saw in their faces seemed to decide him. "Run," he said quietly. "We run." His men didn't need to be told twice. They secured their equipment and headed for the exit, leaving Derek alone with Jack and Anna. For a moment, the three of them stood in tableau, the destroyer and the destroyed, the manipulator and his intended victims. Then Derek laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "You think you've won?" he said to Jack. "You think this ends with me in handcuffs and you riding off into the sunset with your rescued damsel? I think it ends with you facing consequences for your actions." "Consequences?" Derek's laugh turned bitter. "I'll plea bargain to minor charges and serve 2 years in a minimum security facility that's more like a country club. My father will disown me publicly while privately making sure I'm taken care of. In 5 years, I'll be back in business under a different name. Maybe, but Anna will be free. For now, but there are others like me, other Derek Colemans who won't make the mistakes I made. Anna's evidence might destroy me, but it won't change the system that created me." The sound of vehicles was getting closer, multiple engines, probably law enforcement responding to Jack's call. "Maybe not," Jack admitted, "but it's a start." Derek nodded slowly, as if acknowledging a worthy opponent. Then he walked to a far exit and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Jack and Anna alone with the approaching lights and the weight of everything they'd endured. Jack cut Anna's bonds with a piece of broken metal, and she fell into his arms, both of them shaking with relief and exhaustion. "How did you find me?" she asked. "You left breadcrumbs," Jack said, showing her the tablet. "Everything you documented, all the evidence you gathered, it was all there." "I thought Derek had destroyed it all." "He didn't know it existed. That was his mistake, assuming he knew everything." The first police car pulled up outside the grain elevator, followed by others. Soon, the abandoned building was filled with law enforcement officers, federal agents, and the controlled chaos of a crime scene. Jack and Anna gave their statements, turned over the evidence, and watched as Derek's empire began its very public collapse. The story would dominate news cycles for weeks. The heir to a business dynasty, brought down by a secretary's careful documentation and a salesman's desperate gamble. But that was all in the future. For now, they sat in the back of an ambulance while a paramedic checked Anna's injuries, and Jack tried to process everything that had happened. "What now?" Anna asked. Jack looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since this all began. She was battered, exhausted, traumatized by everything Derek had put her through. But there was something else in her eyes, something that hadn't been there when he'd first found her sleeping in his car. Hope. "Now we figure out what comes next," he said. "The charges against me will be dropped. Derek's confession pretty much guarantees that. And you, your business, your meeting, Jack thought about his failed meeting, his struggling company, his carefully constructed life that had been falling apart even before he met Anna. "Sometimes," he said, "the best thing that can happen to a life that's not working is for it to fall apart completely." Anna smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "Is that your way of saying you don't regret helping me?" "I'm saying I finally understand what that line meant." "What line?" "This car only drives one way. I thought it was about the direction we were traveling, but it wasn't. It was about choice. Some choices only move forward. You can't go back. I can't undo them. All you can do is keep moving toward whatever comes next." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching law enforcement officers document the scene of Derek's downfall. The sun was setting behind the grain elevators, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. "I need to ask you something," Anna said eventually. "What?" "When Derek told you this was all planned, that he'd manipulated you into being in the right place at the right time, did that change how you felt about helping me?" Jack considered this. "It made me angry, but not at you." "At Derek?" "At Derek, yes. But mostly at myself." "Why?" "Because for a minute I wondered if it mattered. If my choice to help you was really my choice, or just Derek pulling strings." Jack looked at her, but then I realized it didn't matter. Even if Derek orchestrated the situation, he couldn't control how I responded to it. That was still my choice. Anna reached for his hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. "And now?" "Now we drive to wherever this road leads." The paramedic finished his examination and declared them both fit to travel. As they walked toward Jack's miraculously repaired car, one of the FBI agents was a mechanic in his spare time and had fixed the radiator leak. Anna stopped suddenly. "Jack?" "Yeah." "I know we've only known each other for one day, but it feels like longer." "A lot longer." "Do you think that means something?" Jack looked at the highway stretching ahead of them, lit by the last rays of sunset. His old life was gone. His business would probably fail, his marriage was already over, his carefully planned future had evaporated. But standing here with Anna, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Possibility. "I think it means we're about to find out," he said. They got in the car and Jack started the engine. It purred smoothly, all trace of the earlier grinding sound gone. "Where to?" Anna asked. Jack put the car in drive and pulled onto the highway. In the rearview mirror, he could see the lights of the grain elevator complex growing smaller. Ahead of them, the road disappeared into gathering darkness, leading toward places they'd never been and futures they couldn't imagine. "Forward," he said, and Anna smiled. She placed her hand on the seat between them, palm up. After a moment, Jack covered it with his own, not holding hands exactly, but connected, ready for whatever came next. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, lit by their headlights and the first stars of night. Behind them, Derek Coleman's empire was crumbling, justice was being served, and two people who had been lost were finding their way home. But that wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning. As they drove through the Kansas darkness, Anna broke the comfortable silence. "Jack? Thank you." "For what?" "For choosing to drive forward instead of backward." Jack glanced at her in the dim light of the dashboard. She was looking ahead through the windshield, but there was something in her profile, a calmness, a resolution that hadn't been there before. "Thank you too," he said. "For what?" "For sleeping in my car." Anna laughed, and the sound filled the space between them like music. "Best, worst decision I ever made." They drove on through the night, two people who had found each other in the wreckage of their separate disasters, moving forward into an uncertain but hopeful future. The road ahead was long and unknown, but they were traveling it together, and that made all the difference. In the distance, dawn was beginning to touch the eastern horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. A new day was coming, full of possibilities they couldn't yet imagine, and for the first time in longer than either of them could remember, they were ready for it. Thank you for listening to this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, please support the channel, subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments so you don't miss the next episodes. See you in the next story.